Hey guys, this is Fred from Prettyfly Games, and today we're going to continue with our top-down car controller built in Unity. In our last video we added smoke effects and also tire marks to the car. Today we're going to focus on adding sound effects to this project. Now, sound effects in Unity is something that a lot of people use, but often they actually don't use the full feature set that Unity offers. So before we add any sound effects to our projects, we're going to start with mixers. So a mixer is the ability to create, basically mix the audio sources from the project. So first of all, we will create an asset for that. And we will create an audio mixer, and we will call it default audio mixer, and we can open it up. And this sort of works like regular game objects. We can have different groups, and in these groups we can also have children. So we'll call one object sound effects, and then we will create a child for it, call it car engine, and or actually, we will create one that we call, we will call it car, and then we will have another one called car screech, and a third one called car hit. All right. Then we will change the order of them so that they are a child to our car object, like so. And now we basically have our master, that is the whole, well, all the different audio mixers that we have. And we also have another one called sound effects, and the car is under that. We will come back to this later, and I will show you how it's used. But most of the time when you start a project, start with a mixer from the start, because it's so much easier to manage the sound effects in the project. All right, so now the second part is we're going to create a new script, and we are going to call it car sound effects handler. In Visual Studio, we're going to start by adding three public variables for grabbing the audio sources. First is the tire screeching audio source, then we bring in the engine and the car hit audio source that we will use when a car is colliding with something. Then we will, as before, have a reference to our top-down car controller, and we will assign that in the wake function. So let's add a wake. All right. Then we want to have a function that updates the engine sound effects, and we want it to run in the update. And then we want to have another function that updates the tire screeching noises or sounds. So let's start with the update engine sound effect. So initially we want to, from the top-down car controller, grab basically the velocity. How fast is it running? And the reason why we have this is we want to have an audio source that is playing constantly, and that's going to be the engine noise. And we want it to increase and decrease depending on how fast the car is moving. So that's why we take out the velocity. And we will add just a variable, a float called desired engine volume. And what we will do is we will take the velocity magnitude. Actually, we don't need this abs because it can't be negative. And we want to multiply it by a value that makes it sound good. And then we want to basically clamp it down so it doesn't go above 1.0, which is the maximum audio. And also we want it to have a minimum of 0.2. So even when the car is not moving forward, we want the engine to produce some type of sound. And then we will basically lerp the audio source, the engine audio source. We will lerp it from its current volume until we reach the desired volume at some interval or at some speed, and we will use time delta times 10. And then we also want to add some variation to the engine, and we want to basically change the pitch. And we will do it by using another a local variable called desired engine pitch. And we'll just add a comment that it's a local variable. And how it works is basically, as the car is moving, we want it to change the pitch of the engine dependent on how fast it goes. So when it moves faster, we want it to be a little bit brighter, and when it moves slower, we want it to reduce the pitch. So what we do is we take our desired engine pitch and we multiply it by the velocity magnitude times some number. 0.2 sounds good. And what we will do is basically we will clamp it in the same manner as we have done with the volume, and we will have it as a minimum value of 0.5 and a maximum value of 2. And then we want to lerp the pitch over time, so it reaches the desired engine pitch at a certain time frame, basically. Right, so that's it for the engine sound effects. Then for the tire screech marks, we will do something similar, and we will have the function update tire screeching sound effects. And in this we will basically take out or use the function that we created before in the last video, where we created a top-down car controller is screeching, and it gives out a lateral velocity and if it's braking or not. So what we will do is, if the tires are screeching, and we will also check if it is braking, then we want to do something special, and if it's not, then we will do something else. So if it is braking, we will set the tire audio source volume to itself. We will increase itself over time to reach a value of 1.0, which is the maximum audio level, basically. And we also want to change the pitch slightly over time. So we will use a variable called tire screech pitch, which does not exist yet. We will create it shortly. And it will move from 0.5 or from its current value to maximum 0.5 over time. So let's create that variable, basically. Right, there we go. Ew, I created something wrong. Tire screech, that's what we said. All right. Then if we are not braking, we still want to play this sound, basically, if you're reversing. And it's also if the player is drifting, then we want to use the volume of this audio source, and we want it to be based on how much the sideways velocity is. And we will do something similar with the pitch, basically. Right. And if basically the tires are not screeching, then we want to fade it out slowly. So we will fade out the volume over a certain set time, basically. All right, great. So let's get back into Unity. Right, in Unity, let's select our car, and we will add an empty child to it to make it nicely organized, and we will call it sound effects. And under that, we will create another child, and we will call it engine, or actually we'll call it car engine sound effects. And in here we will add an audio source, and we will select our car engine sound effect, and we want it to play on awake, so it starts playing right from the start, and we want it to loop. The volume will be controlled by the script, and also the pitch, so we don't have to change any of that. Spatial blend is something that I like to use on car games, and it's basically, if you have it set to 2D, then it means when the car is driving around on the screen, you will not have it change from the left speaker to the right speaker. It will always be in the center. If you change this to full 3D, then it means that you will only hear it when it's in the sort of in the vicinity of the audio listener, which is the camera, and you will hear when it moves to the right or the left part of your speakers, if you have a sort of a 2 speakers setup. Also it works if you have a surround sound system. Now if you have it full on 3D, then usually it's a little bit of a hassle to control exactly when it's close enough to the audio source to hear it. So for a top-down racing game, I would probably use something like 0.75 instead. You can experiment with this, and what happens with the volume is basically it will be slightly reduced as you increase the 3D level. Now, the output is the important part here. So we created a mixer earlier, and now we're going to use it. So let's assign our car engine here. The mixer is going to be played out through the car engine audio mixer. And we will notice how that works later on. Now let's duplicate this, and we call it car screech sound effect, and we change it into our car screech mixer, and also the right audio clip for that, car tire screech, and we will have it that it also plays all the time. And then we create the last one, which is the car hit sound effects, and we assign the correct audio clip to it and set the mixer to the right one. This one we don't want it to play on awake, and we don't want it to loop. Alright, great. So let's assign our car SFX handler to the car, and we attach the different audio sources to the right slot. So here we had the engine, and then we have the tire screech, and last we have the car hit, basically. So now if we hit the play button, we should hopefully hear some sounds. Alright. Now, I'm not sure if you heard it, but there was a little mistake in the scene after all. The car engine and the car screech sound effect was playing right from the start. When we played the hit button, we could actually hear them play. So we want to reduce the volume to 0 and allow the script basically to handle it. Now the last part is the car hit sound effects, and we want that to play whenever we are hitting an object in the world. The problem is that the car doesn't have a collider, so we need to fix that first. So let's go to the sprite renderer, and we will add a polygon collider. Now the polygon collider does a fairly good job at approximating where it should be placed, and it follows the sprite, but it's not perfect. So what you do is you go into edit mode, and you drag these markers around, and you can add new ones just by clicking in the middle, and you can delete sections by holding Control down. Like a good chef, however, I've already prepared basically already working polygon collider that is fitted around the sprites better. So let's add that. And what I usually like to do is to move it to its own object, so to keep everything nice and tidy. So let's create one called collider, and we will paste the polygon collider into that. All right, so now we need something as well for the car to be able to collide with. So let's add a roadblock, and let's make it bigger. And we will also rotate it a bit and add a box collider to it. And we will change the size really quickly so it sort of fits the sprite. Like that. All right. So if we hit play now, then the car should hopefully be able to collide with the roadblock. All right, that works, but of course there is no sound effects because we haven't programmed that yet. So let's get back into our script and the car SFX Handler and open it in Visual Studio again. So in Visual Studio, let's scroll down to the bottom of our script, and we will add a new event actually, and we will get that from Unity, and it's on collision enter 2D. And it takes a parameter called collision 2D. Now, this triggers automatically by Unity when our rigid body is colliding with something else. The first thing we want to do is basically get the velocity, or rather the impact velocity, how fast were the objects traveling when they were hitting each other. And we can get that through the collision 2D and the relative velocity, and we take the magnitude from that. Now, what we want to do is basically we want to take this relative velocity and multiply it by a value. 0.1 is something that I think works quite well. And we want to use that as volume when we're playing the car audio hit source volume. We want to also have a little bit of pitch change, so there's a variation to the sound effects, and we'll just add a small variation here. Then we also want to check if the sort of the hit car audio is already playing. If it is, then we don't have to play it again, because then we can have multiple hit times all the time. But if it's not playing, then let's play it. Alright, so with this change, then the car should react to when it's getting hit or when it's hitting something else. So let's try that in Unity. Alright, so this seems to work. If we are hitting something with a high speed, it will give us a large bang, and if we're hitting it with a slower speed, it will just be a little bit of a noise. Alright, now if we have done everything correctly with the mixers, then we have the ability to make sure that all the sounds are according to the right level. And this is much easier than changing the audio source. And what we can do is basically go into our mixer, and we can press this button, edit in play mode, and it allows us to basically change the volumes of each individual thing. So the car engine, if we want it to be higher, then we can just grab this, and it will increase the volume a lot. And we will keep it at 0 for now. As well, the car hits, I think it was a little bit loud. So now we have it on a much lower level. This is a lot easier to change than going through basically the audio sources and changing everything by hand and changing our code. The cool part is that we can also take this parent object and change its volume, and that will change all the different parts, the underlying parts basically. Now there are a few more pretty cool things that we can do to this, One is that Unity has a lot of possibilities when it comes to the mixers. So the car engine, for instance, right now it only has the attenuation, which is the volume on it, but we could also make it sound more interesting by adding a flang, and that changes the volume up and down a little bit and adds basically this interesting sound effects. And we can also add a little bit of a distortion to make it sound more, well, more like a car engine. And we can tweak these values until we think we have something that suits our game. Now, like I said before, the beauty with this is that we can change, for instance, the whole car and all of its audio or all of its mixers under it. So if you want to have a car that sounds like there are multiple cars racing, then we can add an echo to it, and instantly we have loads of car noises at the same time. Another good part with structuring your audio mixers like this is that it's easy to add settings later on for sound effects volumes, music volumes, etc. Because what you can do is you can select your sound effects audio mixer here, and you can go up to volume, and if you right click volume, you can press the expose volume SFX to scripts. This allows you to basically access this value through a script and change it. So you could read in a setting that is the overall sound effects volume and set that through a script, basically. When we've exposed the variable, we need to have a name to it so we can access it through a script, and it's under expose variables. And it selects the myExposed parameter as a default, and what we want to do is rename it into SFX volume, for instance. So that way we will be able to set it through a script, and it's easier to manage than just call it my parameter. So let's open Visual Studio again and look at our car sound effects handler. So the mixers are under another namespace in Unity, and that's Unity Engine Audio. And normally you would probably do this in a setting script, not in the car sound effects handler, but I'll just add it here so you can see how it works. So we'll bring in a variable, audio mixer, and when it starts, we will just reduce the volume of the audio mixer to 0.5. And we call it SFX volume, right? So when we hit play in Unity, we can see that the volume reduced to 0.5 decibels instead. So hopefully from this you learned how to use audio mixers and that you should use them early. In the next video, we will look at how you can add AI to a top-down racing game like this, or any other actually top-down game for that matter. Alright, so hit that subscribe button if you want to get a notification when the next video is out, and have a great day. Bye bye. Here's an example from our game Total Arcade Racing, which uses this component for its physics. You can find the game on Steam and take it for a spin if you want. Thanks for watching the video, and I hope that you enjoyed it.